Feedback Resilience Part 2. I am going to give you 4 steps to help you move through constructive or critical feedback. You do not want to miss this. Here we go. Hello, friends. Welcome back. I hope you are having a good start to your week. I am excited to be back talking to y'all about feedback resilience. This is Feedback Resilience Part 2. So if you haven't already, I want you to go back and listen to Part 1, where I offer you a framework for how I want you to think about your skills and how I want you to think about your value and your worthiness. And I think that framework I offered you in Part 1 really sets you up nicely to be able to step into what I'm going to outline today, which is 4 steps to move through when you have received feedback, particularly critical feedback, constructive feedback, any feedback that hasn't landed with you in a way that feels great, anything that has got you stuck in your head, got you feeling insecure, got you feeling angry, any of that. I'm going to walk you through a 4-step process for how you can move through that feedback in a way that's a lot more resilient. But again, if you have not listened to Part 1, go back and check that out. Okay. So let's start with step 1. You've just had some kind of possibly formal or informal discussion with a supervisor, someone who is offering you feedback on your performance, and you are fired up. Maybe you're insecure, maybe you're angry, maybe you're feeling really defensive. The first thing I want to encourage you to do is a 24-hour hiatus from really responding or seeking a lot more information on that feedback, or even trying to work through it. What I find is that when we're taking in feedback, anything that we view as critical, and for some of you, you will be getting, feedback that maybe is clearly seen as critical by anyone. It might be that someone is telling you your performance isn't up to par, but some of you are going to be in the category where you've been given feedback, everything was really positive, and maybe they had like a flippant remark or a small piece of information on something that you could work on, and your brain is like perceiving that as the worst thing in the world, and it's fixated on it. So it could be anywhere on the spectrum. What happens when we are in this position where we're feeling like we're getting any kind of perceived negative feedback, our brain sees it as rejection, and when we are being rejected from the work culture, the community, the group, it panics. It's like it literally sort of steps into that fight or flight survival space. So that's why you start to feel your heart race, and maybe your face gets red and you feel like your mouth is dry. Your brain is telling your body that there is serious danger. So your amygdala is kicked in, and what happens is we are really bad when we're in that headspace at taking in information, at being reasonable, at responding in a great way. We tend to be spinning, and it's almost like you can't hear and process things in a very effective way because your body's busy trying to alert you to the fact that there's massive danger around you. So I encourage you to get out of fight or flight before you start exploring this feedback and before you start possibly defending or, inquiring more. That's not to say that if you're in, a meeting and someone's offering you feedback and you feel a little confused and you want some clarification or you want an example, great, ask for it. But what you're going to notice for a lot of you is that you're immediately going to feel a sense of fear, a sense of rejection, and a need to be really defensive and wanting to, quote, defend yourself. But you're not in the best emotional place to do that. Oftentimes, people will speak up or push on that feedback before they've had time to process it, and you might feel very different about that 24 hours later. The more you do this, for me, for example, the 24-hour rule I used for a long time, I find now I can most of the time move out of that amygdala response in a few hours, maybe half a day, and then I'm able to go through the other steps. But 24 hours is a good amount of time for most people. You might feel differently about it 24 hours later than you did when you first got that feedback. It's like thinking about if you're having a fight with like your romantic partner and you're so fired up and it feels like the most important thing in the world and you feel yourself just like in such a defensive state, and then like the next day you care about it significantly less. So wait 24 hours, maybe even longer if you really find yourself spinning, feeling defensive. And during that time, give yourself space to just feel how you're feeling. It's normal to feel fired up. It's normal to feel defensive. It's normal to feel a lot of fear. It's normal to feel sad or rejected. All of those things, it's just your brain's working and it's operating the way it's supposed to. So a lot of times we can try to move through that too quickly, or we question, like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I not able to take that in? And for most people, we're just not exposed to critical feedback enough to become neutralized to it. So like if you're in a profession where getting a lot of really constructive and even perceived as like negative feedback often, you will oftentimes become kind of neutralized to it. You're used to it. It's the culture. Everyone's kind of critiquing everybody else and you can move through it pretty quickly. But in my experience, most of us are just not in a position where we're getting feedback enough to where we are able to not feel threatened by it. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with you because it feels threatening, and you want to like let that drain out of you, you know, like a air coming out of a balloon. We want to let that stage drain out of you. So you might need to complain to your best friend and your partner. You might need to be really fired up. You might need to go through all of the things that you feel like are wrong with them and the feedback and all of it, which is a normal thing that our brain does. Once you feel yourself having drained a lot of that energy and you don't really feel like you're in that fight or flight, if you have further questions or clarifications, you can do that from a space that's much more clear. But now's the time to really start to dive into the feedback and to move through step 2 in the process to help you become more resilient to getting this kind of feedback. So the second thing I want you to do is pull the feedback out and what I call neutralize it. So I talk about it as if you're like sifting it through a strainer. So like imagine you're pouring something into the strainer and you're literally sifting it through. You're getting rid of the context, the tone, the feelings you have about your supervisor, what you hate about the work culture, all of your feelings about the expectations. It's not because none of those things matter. It's not because you don't have a right to have your opinion on the work culture, the expectations, you know, the way in which you're receiving feedback, all of that. You are entitled to have your preferences and your opinions on all of those things. It's just because when it comes to your skill value, we want you to be in a position where you're always able to objectively take in feedback to ensure that you're able to increase your skill value to the best of your ability anytime you're getting feedback. And you can't do that if you're not able to take in the feedback. So we want you to be able to take in what's true about it so you can be really clear on where to improve, how to improve your value in this particular context, how to improve your skill value moving forward in your career. So in step 1, you're going to sift it. So you're going to set aside all of the things that your brain is telling you, all of the things that tend to be in the defensiveness about the person, the culture, the way that they told you, the expectations. And you're going to get to a simple sentence, a simple neutral sentence about each piece of feedback that you were given. And I'm going to give you an example. This can be hard to do. This is kind of like a skill, but once you can do it, it's very, very powerful. So the goal, of course, is to see where can I increase my skill value in this context and in future contexts. So you want to be able to sift through it. You want to be able to get through all the stuff, all the drama that your brain's in about all the things that are wrong with this place and the way that they function. Let's take an example. Your supervisor tells you you need to be more resourceful. Most people are going to have this reaction. How am I supposed to find things when no one's training me. I'm going to do a whole episode on just this training issue that comes up a lot for people. I'm asking really reasonable questions. I can't be expected to learn this much. This supervisor is rude. They're not helpful. They're making me feel insecure. Okay? These are all reactions that I've had before, many of my clients have had before, to this type of feedback. I want you to sift it. So we're going to drop how we feel about the supervisor. We're going to drop how we feel about the training. We're going to drop how we feel about the expectations. We're going to drop all of that. And we're going to strain it out into a simple sentence. Another way that you can help strain it out is to imagine that your best friend is your supervisor and your best friend gave you this feedback. Oftentimes when it's someone that we love and trust, we can see the feedback very neutrally and we can strain it out really quickly. So when I strain out this feedback that I need to be more resourceful and I take out that I think they didn't train me and that she's not reasonable, she's rude, her approach is too aggressive, she's not giving me positive feedback, what I'm left with is I need to try to find the answer myself or take my best guess. I'm being told that I need to try to find this information myself. That's the simple sentence that we're going to strain out of that. I'm going to walk through another example. Let's assume that your supervisor tells you that you're not challenging your team members enough. So let's assume that you're maybe a manager, a team lead. Part of your job is keeping up with how other people are doing, evaluating their performance, etc. And let's assume that your supervisor said, I noticed when we were in that meeting and one of your team members was offering some information, you're not challenging them enough. A common response might be for your brain to start saying, I'm not going to disrespect my team. I have a collaborative style of management. I can't believe that he's questioning my approach to how I work with this team. So we're going to strain it out, okay? We're going to drop how we feel about our own approach. We're going to drop how we feel about the supervisor. We're going to drop how we feel about the company and the expectations. And we're going to look at what the feedback is. I'm being asked to push back and question when a team member is offering something, maybe that's off base or doesn't meet expectations. So step 2 is to strain it all out and just make each piece of feedback that you were given a simple sentence, a neutral sentence that doesn't have in it a bunch of thoughts about them, your workplace, your opinions. What you're going to be left with is basic neutralized sentences about the feedback, okay? It doesn't mean that you're going to be like feeling great about this at this stage, but at least we're able to see things often more clearly when we've strained it out, when we've looked at it through the space of like our best friend told us this. What would we assume they were telling us if it was our best friend? The third thing I want you to do is I want you to check yourself on what you're making any of this feedback mean about you, your career, and your future success. Because what can really muck up our response to feedback is when we make it mean something really significant about our ability to succeed in this place, our overall capabilities, the security of the job, how successful we can be in the future in our careers, if we should be in this line of work to begin with. And so I want you to really look at, am I making any of these sentences, these strange sentences, am I making any of them mean something significant about me? Am I making it mean I'm not valued? Am I making it mean I'm not capable? Am I making it mean I won't succeed? Am I making it mean I can't be successful in the future? And I want you to do your best to drop what you are making it mean. Because in my experience, most of the time, your brain is going to make it mean something that isn't accurate and that is far more significant than what's actually going on. So the feedback, maybe you need to be more resourceful, you need to push on your team. I don't want to see you making so many mistakes. And your assumption that this means I'm not capable, I'm not going to be able to succeed, I'm never going to be able to make it in this industry, I shouldn't be in this career path. All of those are just not equivalent to the piece of information that you were given. And this type of, it's like a thought error, as how we talk about it. This type of thought error often keeps people stuck where they push back on the feedback, they feel defensive, they're unable to take in where they can increase their skill value, and then they end up self-sabotaging themselves in their jobs. So I want you to really notice, write down what you're making it mean, and literally X those out. This does not mean you're not capable. It doesn't mean you're not valued. It doesn't mean you won't succeed. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be let go unless someone's telling you this is your last chance and you may be let go. Even then, we can move from the assumption that you can still be successful in your career moving forward. Okay? So I want you to drop what you're making it mean. Side note, for my managers who are listening, for my team leads, for anyone listening who gives feedback and has to give constructive and critical feedback, what you can do to help make the feedback more, palatable for the person who you're giving it to is you can often offer them a way to sidestep this what they're making it mean thing. And the way you can do that is by literally saying, let me be clear, you're really valued here. I believe in your capability. I see you as really operating successfully overall in this role. Here's my feedback. So knowing that many, many people make it mean something far more significant than just the piece of information we're giving them, I encourage people who are giving the feedback to try to sidestep that by just offering that to them. But in the world, for those of you who are working and have supervisors, most people aren't going to do this, right? Many people are not highly, highly skilled on how to give feedback. So you're going to be dealing with lots of different styles of giving feedback. Some will be really effective for you, some will not. And we just can't control that. So what I can help you control is how you take in that feedback. So we've waited 24 hours, maybe a little longer if we need to. We've waited until that fight or flight has calmed down. We've let ourselves feel all the feels around it. We've taken the feedback and we've neutralized it. We've put it through the strainer. We've taken out all of the drama that the brain's in around our feelings about the culture, the supervisor, the expectation. You can pick all that back up after, right? No one's asking you to let go of that and never have it again, but it's just not going to serve you in moving through this feedback. Then we've looked at anything we might be making it mean, which is really why you might be resistant to hearing some of these things. And the fourth thing we're going to do now is we're going to look at our neutral sentences and we're going to ask ourselves, where are they right? And this is the step that is the hardest for the brain. It does not like doing this, okay? Especially if you have felt really threatened by the feedback, if it felt harsh to you, if it felt personal to you. Your brain is not going to want to look at this piece, but this is a super power skill. To be able to sift through feedback, to be able to see where people are right, and to be able to pull out where you can increase your skill value by looking at what they're offering you, despite your feelings about the person, the culture, the workplace, the expectations. So I want you to consider the possibility that they're offering something that can serve you and that's going to help you succeed not only in this job, but in future jobs. For example, let's look at this piece of feedback that we need to be more resourceful. If I was working with you, I would want to ask you, have you been afraid of making a mistake? Have you been seeking out a lot of information from your supervisor, from possibly teammates, whoever it is, before moving forward because you have a lot of fear that you're going to do it wrong? If your answer is yes, then the feedback you got may be correct. It may be that this fear of making a mistake and, feeling like you have to be perfect has meant that you are squeezing at everything really tightly and asking your supervisor constantly and just, really limiting your own resourcefulness. So if that's true, this piece of feedback is really helpful for you, right? It is a way you can increase your skill value. It's a way to realize, oh, I need to trust myself more. I need to slow down. I need to allow myself to look for these answers and to be resourceful, to move forward with what I think is the best decision or the best piece of information. I'm not doing that enough, and I'm getting that feedback from my supervisor. Let's look at the other example. The feedback that you need to be more challenging to your teammates. You're a manager or a team lead. If I was working with you, I would be pushing to see, are you afraid of being disliked? Are you a people pleaser? Do you find yourself worried about making someone mad, or putting someone in a position where they're going to feel defensive, or they're not going to like you or like the information that you're giving them? If your answer is yes, then I'm going to ask you to consider that their feedback is right, that you can be collaborative and also be really clear and constructive with your teammates. So in this case, you might look at that and think, I am kind of afraid of being disliked. So where are they right? Well, I hesitate sometimes to call them out or push on a piece of information that I think needs to be investigated more, or whatever that, fear is. I may be someone who is not really showing up in service of the outcome of the project and in service of this team member because I'm thinking a lot about making sure that they like me. In that case, you can see something that is really helpful for you to take in this feedback, and something that's going to increase your value, increase your skill value moving forward. With all of that said, when you have all of your sentences, it's okay to drop outliers. It's okay to drop things that don't feel right or feel way off base. Okay? So for example, I get feedback on content that I put out into the world. I have videos on YouTube. I get on some of them lots and lots and lots and lots of comments. If I see a comment that says, there's too much information in here, I can't take it all in, I got lost, I am likely going to really take that in and consider that they're right, because I know I can get really excited about offering my listeners content, and I can want to give you guys all the things all at once. This is very common, right? So if I get that feedback, it's going to resonate for me as, this might be right. I need to really take this in. Where are they right? Was this too complicated? Did I offer too much? I've gotten feedback from a comment on one of my videos that said there was no helpful information in this. Okay? When I take in that feedback without any drama, without any of resistance to it, it doesn't feel accurate to me, right? I am able to see, I believe my information is helpful. Many, many people tell me my information is helpful. There's lots of feedback and comments that are letting me know how much this information has helped them, how much the strategy has worked for them. So it's just an outlier for me. I just drop it. In your career, you will find outliers. So sometimes you will come across some feedback. Maybe it's just a mean comment, or, a piece of information that you're this is just so inconsistent with all the feedback I've consistently gotten about myself and my performance and how I interact. So it's always helpful to start with, where are they right? But it's also okay if you come to the place where you're this just feels off base, and to just eliminate outliers. Okay? I, of course, always encourage you first to assume there's something true in it, because we have a tendency to eliminate more than anything else, to assume that there's nothing in it that we can actually take, that it's coming from some hurtful place. So to review, part 1, of course, is framing this whole thing in your skill value versus your human value, not connecting it to your worthiness, always starting from there. And then when you get feedback that feels like it is hurtful, harsh, hard for you to process, you're going to wait 24 hours or longer, let your brain have its spiral, let the fears be there, wait until you can feel your nervous system calming down. You're going to pull out the feedback, you're going to neutralize it by sifting it through the strainer and getting rid of all of your feelings about the context of it, the way it was approached, the organization that you work for, all of it. And you're going to write out just your simple sentence that describes each piece of feedback that you were given. You're going to look at what you're making it mean, all the fears you have around this feedback. Any strong resistance you feel to something being true is probably because you have a really strong fear that it's true, a fear that you're not capable enough, and if this is true, it's going to mean something significant about your career. So identify what you're making it mean and X them out. Drop it. It is likely way too extreme, and your brain is just future tripping and panicking based on a piece of feedback. And then finally, you're going to dive into those neutral sentences and you're going to ask yourself the question, where are they right? Can I see where they're right in this? Is there a mindset piece that may be influencing this? So if they've identified an area that they are wanting you to work on or improve, do you have anxiety, resistance, any mindset issues going on related to that particular area? If you do, they are likely offering you feedback that is helpful. That is your 4-step process for taking in that feedback. When you can learn how to do this, y'all, and you can do it, for me, like I said, it's faster than it used to be. That's not to say that if I don't get something like really harsh or in a new setting or new context, I might need 24 hours or longer. But when you get good at this, it's like a superpower because you stop being so afraid of feedback. You stop feeling so fragile. You stop thinking that any piece of constructive feedback means something significant about you or your career, and you increase your skill value substantially. In my experience, having feedback resilience is something that many, many, many people never get to in their careers. So if you can really work this muscle for you, it is going to help you exponentially over and over and over and over again. Okay, friends, if you are wanting to adapt to your new job, if you want to increase your feedback resilience, please go over to Erin, M as in mindset, fully.com. Check out my coaching program, particularly if you are someone that is experiencing any of the mindset issues I've talked about on these podcasts, and you're noticing that you have them moderate to significantly, okay? Someone asked me the other day how to know if my content would be enough to get them moving forward or if they would need one-on-one coaching from me or someone else. And my answer to that is, if you are experiencing these things mildly, if you have a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit of anxiety, you likely will be able to take in the information, have an awareness, move yourself through these strategies and coaching techniques. If you are someone that is experiencing this moderate to severely, you will likely find that you're able to get relief and then it wears off, get relief and then it wears off. And that's just because there's levels that need to be explored that are deeper, and there's things that are more difficult for you to see, and things are just holding on tighter in your brain. And that's when you want to have someone on the outside moving you through this. So whether you check me out or someone else out, if your company does offer coaching or resources for you, I encourage you to always take advantage of that. I will be back with more information for you. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week.